All right, welcome back to another episode of the In Between Overs podcast. We're your host of the day's play. As always, I'm Tarat.
And I'm Ishan.
So I woke up this morning and there was this feeling inside my head that I couldn't put a finger on. And I had to discuss with my wife, who's a nurse, and she was saying, "Oh, I think it might be a migraine." And I was like, no, I don't think it's a migraine, but I do feel like it's a headache. And I feel like that's what every single Indian is feeling right now after watching yesterday's play of cricket.
No, you're exactly right. It started last night, at least for me, Eastern Standard Time. Going throughout the night and even this morning, when I look back at the scorecard, it was a big headache for Indians all over. It was a huge headache for the 11 on the field, especially Rohit Sharma. Travis said, India's kryptonite.
Oh my gosh, Ravi Shastri on comms when Travis Head got to his 100 and he started it. I don't know why it took so long for this to catch on, but it's such an easy term to say.
No, great
Travis
pun.
Headache. It's the perfect pun of all time. It's perfect for how every single one of us are feeling this morning.
No, exactly. And I remember last night, Toronto, when we were texting during Australia's innings, we were just frustrated. It was just frustrated, and we couldn't do anything, but we were just frustrated at how good Travis Head was batting. He made it look so easy, and again, for the second test in a row, he's really making India suffer.
Back to back. You gotta play that song in the background. He's probably playing that. I don't know if they listen to hip hop like that, but
My gosh.
but man, what an innings! We'll definitely talk about Head and Smith later on in our conversation today. But let's just take a minute to just talk about the pump, the absolute pump, as the Aussies say, that India was dishing out with the bowling, minus the great man Jasprit Bumrah. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on India's bowling performance?
No, to your point, except for Jesse Bumrah, you got to put the asterisks on him for India's bowling. It just seemed regular. It just seemed like it was easy for the Australians to pick up. And I know initially, at least in the beginning of the session, the ball was nipping around a little bit. But Smith took his time, and when things settled down, it really looked like Australians were making runs for fun. Siraj, there's huge hopes for Siraj, using some of that momentum and some of that backlash into this test. He had some energy in front, but it just seemed like tired legs. It just seemed like India could not do what they needed to do with the ball.
Yeah, it seemed way too pedestrian. The bowling, India's the pitch. Let's talk about the pitch. There was you when you look at the scorecard, and Australia finished at 407 for 7 at the end of the day's play. And when you look at a scorecard like that, 405, 405 for 7, when you look at that score, you think, oh, it's a batting wicket, placid track, nothing much in for the bowlers. But then when you actually watch the game, and if you watch it live, overcast conditions, the ball was moving around the entire day, even with the older ball. And I just couldn't understand the lengths of India's bowling. Now, again, we'll caveat this with we're not professional players, but we know enough to know that when the ball is doing something, you want to pitch it up. And
Oh my
for the
gosh.
for the uneducated on the various lengths that a fast bowler can bowl, so you have Yorker length, which is extremely full, then you have full length, and then you have good length, back of the length, and short of length. It felt like India was bowling mostly back of the length. Every now and then you got good length balls and sometimes full balls. When I feel, and what the commentators were saying, it should have been more full of length deliveries and then good length deliveries. It just felt a lot of shortish balls that were moving, and those were so easy to play. Because if you think about it from a batsman's perspective, when the ball's moving around, if you drop it short, you can watch the seam movement better than if the ball is fuller. Because when the ball is fuller, it's harder to predict which way the ball is going to seam. And it just felt like, other than Bumrah, all of India's bowlers, Akashdeep, Mohammad Siraj, Nitish Reddy, they were just not full enough, and it just made it so easy for the batters to hit the ball.
No, and I think you hit it exactly to the point where length was a big issue. And you heard it on, in the beginning of the day's play, the second day's play, when some of the commentators were talking about the bowling in the first day, they mentioned it was a bit short, a bit too short. They mentioned the morning. And then you would hope that India, made some adjustments, but it didn't really seem like the case. And I'm not sure if you caught some of the action as well, but there's a lot of some LBW shouts. But again, all of the shouts were balls going above the wickets. And we know GABA, we know it has to hit below the neck, the knee roll, and essentially they did not get the lengths right. And there was some defensive bowling as well. Like I'm sure you've noticed, Nikish Reddy bowling maybe fourth, fifth stump, getting those overs in, perhaps trying to make sure that they don't get enough runs. But in a game like this, when Australia is really just making runs for fun, you have to get wickets. You gotta maybe step away from containing, step away from trying to make the runs less, but go for wickets. And the balls there that India pitched were not wicket taking balls in my eyes.
Yeah, and that's the other thing you mentioned about the line as well. So the length is one thing, and then the line is another thing. It didn't seem like they let the Australians play the ball as much. They gave them a lot of opportunities to leave the ball. If you look at day one, and I know day one was mostly rained out, they only had 13 overs in the day, but you can safely say Australia won that day because they didn't lose a wicket, and India's bowling was just it seemed easy to face because they weren't hitting third, fourth stump. They were hitting like fifth stump line, sixth stump line, seventh
Exactly.
stump line at some instances. Someone like an Akash Deep, he looked really threatening, but he wasn't getting the batsman to play enough.
Exactly. No, exactly that. And as you mentioned earlier, apart from Bumrah, it just seemed like the Australians were waiting for Boomer's spell to get over, and when he was off, they just all right, let's just make some runs now. So quite a pedestrian performance for sure, as you mentioned, for India's bowling.
Yeah, and we'll get to Bumrah in a second. If and now they say that you can't judge a wicket or a pitch until the other team has batted as well, or the other team has bowled, whichever way you want to look at it. I have a strong feeling that Australia is going to come out and they're going to pitch it full or good length, and India is just going to be nicking everything.
I unfortunately hate saying this as well, but I see it. I see it. It always plays out that way, where the pitch looks good, for batting, and then you change the lens, you change your lines, and now it's a bowling wicket. So we hope that some of Australia's bowling is also pedestrian, but to your point though, I don't expect it to be such.
Especially when you have Hazelwood in that lineup. I
Oh,
could just I could just picture his Hazelwood trotting in, pitching it, pitching it on fourth stump or fifth stump line, and pitching it full or just fuller than good length. And I can just see the Indian batsman getting squared up, trying to drive the ball, catch to the
yes.
outside edge. Oh my gosh. I'm nervous for that. I'm super nervous for that.
Oh no, again, this is what champions are made of, and hopefully India can figure it out. But to your point, it's I think it was an unfortunate toss to win. Right? I don't know. Again, hindsight 2020, but to your point, it was difficult for them to get wickets in the first day, and then the second day, only really Bumrah putting a lot of stress on the batsman. Just didn't seem like India was pumped enough to get wickets on day two.
Yeah, yeah, and great segue. Jasprit Bumrah, the only silver lining in that bowling lineup, bowling attack. Pfeiffer, probably one of the more harder working Pfeiffers, you'd say, for him, because he had absolutely no help on the other end. I mean, you could argue that in bursts, India, Siraj, and Akashdeep looked threatening, but it wasn't sustained enough to create wicket taking opportunities on both ends. And then Jadoo as well didn't really hold the end. So there was a lot of pressure on Bumrah to deliver, and it felt like every time he came into the attack, he needed to take a wicket.
No, exactly. And dare I quote Miss Isha Gua, Bumrah was the MVP. Now, I'm not going to say most valuable primate. I'll say most valuable player for Team India. But again, I don't know how you feel about that, Tron. But I didn't think it was too big of a comment. Sometimes it's tongue-in-cheek comment, let it go. But there was some controversy on her calling Jasprit Bumrah India's MVP, most valuable primate.
Yeah, so I didn't even know she said that until you told me like literally 5 seconds ago. And and I'm shocked that she said that. Like I don't know why she would say that. Maybe it's intentional. Maybe she wanted to create headlines for her for, you know, people say sometimes when you make controversial statements, your rating or your
Oh yes,
awareness goes up, right? So you can argue. I mean, it doesn't sound too harsh, but when you put it against the backdrop of all the incidents that have happened in the past, the Monkey Gate incident in
Oh
2008,
yes,
things
yes.
like that, it starts getting into that area where, should she have said that? Was it really funny? Because I don't know if it was funny. And Isha Gua doesn't strike me as a funny person. She has some really good takes, but at the same time, no, it wasn't her, so I shouldn't say that. But at the same time, sometimes some of the takes she makes is kind of like, okay, like, just stick to what you're doing.
I know.
Try not to cross the line,
No, my thoughts are exactly as yours. Wasn't really necessary, and I feel like sometimes, sometimes you get that with Harsha Bogli as well, where they get caught up in the commenting that they always feel like they need to one up each other, in terms of their puns or funny bits. But unfortunate comment. I don't think she should have made it. But no, back to the cricket. I do think he
Just a,
was.
just a just
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
side note, just one more side note that came to my mind. Um, I wonder how it is for commentators in terms of whether there's pressure on them to make certain takes so that it helps with viewership and ratings and things of that nature. You wonder, like, I don't know how that business works. I don't know what they are allowed and not allowed to say on contracts. Obviously, I would think they are not allowed to say extremely controversial things, like the most obvious things. But you also wonder whether they have to say certain things so that it can help with viewers and ratings and helping with people with eyeballs on that particular channel.
No, I exactly right. I think there's X amount of seats in a commentating box. The distribution rights are always very competitive. You got Fox versus Channel 7 versus Star Sports, and they have their own
Mm-hmm.
panelists and their own commentators. And I'm sure there is competition in that regard, and so there is obviously um, pressure to retain eyeballs, retain ears, but there's better ways to do that. We can name a list of commentators throughout our past who literally don't even be funny, just with their takes, just with their analogies, just with their knowledge of the history of the game, right? They're incredible, right? I don't have to name a few. We've heard so many throughout the years, but sometimes legends just stick to their guns, stick to what works best, and that's what works best for commentators sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully Isha Goa comes on the right side of this comment. But let's come back to the cricket. So, Bumrah, Jasprit Bumrah, I'm nervous. I'm nervous at the workload that he's taken on.
Yes, it's
He's
a long
he's
series. People
It's a long
don't
series.
realize
Yeah,
it's a very long
25
series.
overs. 25 overs in his legs. It's only the third test match. There's two test matches to go. And if India somehow managed to come, I don't see India winning this test match, but if they're able to come out of this with a draw, I think that's as good as a win. And if that is the case, then going into test 4 and 5, you need Bumrah.
100%. I think to your point though, India, we always talk about now Test cricket going towards either a win or a lose situation, but I do think that India's best case scenario for this is a draw, and I think they have to pray for some rain because there are some uh, discussions of potential rain coming uh, in Brisbane, so hopefully there is. As an Indian fan, I hate saying that because I always love results driven matches, but oh my gosh, the way that India got pumped today, and India also batting fourth on this wicket,
Yes.
traditionally would have been tough to
Yeah.
chase, right? I know they did it last time, but it's historically been very tough. I think, yeah, they got to hope for a draw, unfortunately. And to your point, Bumrah needs rest because imagine a test match in Australia without Bumrah in your lineup. In my eyes, I don't see any wicket takers. It does seem like Bumrah's the number one bowler for India, and the rest are potentially good number three bowlers for India. You don't have a good number two who's really there to put pressure on the opposition.
Yeah. And I think we're finally starting to see how much India miss Mohammad Shami.
I 100% agree. Shami, or even
Because
the movie days as well, right?
and and this name gets forgotten, and I don't know why. But if you remember the last two series, there was a bowler there that really helped India, and his name is synonymous with your name, Ishad Sharma.
Ishant Sharma, yeah, no, I
Ishad
agree.
Sharma he is one of India's greatest bowlers. I don't care. I'm saying it. He is one of India's greatest bowlers. And no one talks about him, but he made a difference in the last two series that India won. And he's definitely missed here. He's definitely missed here.
Yeah, no, no, exactly. He brought in, I would say, good fundamentals to any bowling lineup, but he also brought that, I think, well-intentioned aggression. He was able to, like, look opposition in the eyes, make weird faces to Steve Smith. He was able to use some of that aggression to get wickets. And I think back then as well, him and Kohli being Delhi boys themselves, they had a great rapport, great relationship. And so obviously, Kohli having trust in him and him trusting Kohli in return, because it was obviously near the end of his career. He was able to really make a difference. And to your point, we're definitely missing someone like that, someone to really do a great spell with Jasprit Bumrah and put that pressure on the opposition.
Yeah, they bring experience too, right? Ishan Sharma had a
Yes.
lot of experience. So does Mohammad Shami. Siraj is getting there, and the last series was Siraj's first series. That's what he really broke into the limelight, if you will, from an international on the international test scene. And this is his second series down under, and you can feel like he still doesn't have the experience of a Bumrah, of a Ishan Sharma, of a Mohammad Shami yet. And then of course you have your third seamer is like their first time playing. So that clearly is showing. And I feel that if India can get out of this test match with a draw, Shami has been named in the Bengal team. If he can be fit and if he flies in for the Boxing Day test match, which is still 11 days away, which is a lot of time for him, not for India, but a lot of time for him. If he can somehow make it to the fourth and fifth test match, I think that may change the series, the dynamic of the series.
No, I completely agree. We are missing Ashami with his seam position and his clean bowling action. We're definitely missing him and Jesse Bumrah and their spelling together and their spells together. Because to your point, right now it just doesn't seem like India has really more than one wicket taking pace attacker.
Yeah, yeah. So earlier you talked about India batting fourth, which
Yes.
is because India won the toss and they decided to bowl first. What are your thoughts on that and Rohit's captaincy overall so far?
That's a great question. First of all, I'll take the first. I'll take talking about the toss initially. So I think initially when I turned the TV on, you saw the conditions and you saw it was overcast. You're like, okay, you know what? This could be favorable bowling conditions. And then when Roach number one and he mentioned that, I'm like, okay, India doing well. But then when Pat Cummins seemed a little ambivalent in bowling first as well, when he's like, no, like we don't mind batting second. Then it got to me to maybe research a little bit more on the history of the pitch, a little bit more about the day's play. Sorry, about the weather coming in, and hindsight 2020. But usually, if you win first at the GABA, you bat first because you don't want to chase on the last day, or the fourth inning, just because sometimes they talk about the cracks opening up and whatnot. Um, there was that discussion, and then people, online were obviously talking about was Rohit Sharma even confident in batting first, right? In terms of
Mm.
is India lineup even ready to face such bowling in those conditions? So I don't know. Hindsight 2020. I'm sure there's a lot of thought that went into the toss decision, but uh, it is what it is. Now, in terms of Rohit Sharma's captaincy, I think there's a big difference in Rohit Sharma's captaincy versus you compare to Virat Kohli or Jasprit Bumrah. I do think the latter are a little bit more of aggressive captains, and I think a good example of that would be when Travis Head came to bat in. I would have liked to see Bumrah coming in a little bit earlier to exert that pressure and perhaps getting that wicket of Travis Head early on. But he did stick with some of the other bowlers, and I think that really did allow um, uh, Travis had to really settle in. So I do think, and also you did hear from both Indian commentators as well as Australian commentators really have some opinions about his field settings as well. How there's some wasted fieldsmen around. How he could have really looked to um, stop the easy ones and twos. So I do think that. Unfortunately, Rohit Sharma just his captaincy has not looked good in the last Test match, and it's not looking good in the first Test match. What are your thoughts on both the toss as well as Rohit Sharma's captaincy?
Yeah, first the toss. I wonder how much of the last test match that India was here had an impact on it, because when
Fair.
India were last year, that was the big test match where India won and that helped them win the series. And India batted fourth in that innings,
Yep.
or that test match, I should say. And I did look at who won the toss, and Australia won that toss and batted first, right? So to your point, most teams win the toss and bat first. But I wonder if that had an impact that, hey, let's just do what we did last time, because we could probably chase something on this wicket. So I don't know. I don't know. We'd have to see the test playing out. I felt like also the overcast conditions might have had an impact on that. He probably hoped India would have taken a few wickets earlier on, and they did. And Australia were under 100 for 3 wickets down. And when you look at that, that's pretty good. You'll take that. And it was really the Smith and Head partnership, which I know we're going to get to, that took the game away from India. But right until, even when Australia were under 200, you felt like if India took a couple wickets, they're still in the game. But then you saw what Head and Smith did, and the rest is history. So you don't know. You don't know whether it would have made sense. I feel like it was one of those tosses where probably would have been better to lose, right? And that's the position that Australia find themselves in. So I don't know. I don't know what would have been the right thing to do there. In regards to the captaincy, I completely agree. I think we need a change in the guard with the captaincy on the test level.
Ton.
I think it's he's also aging. He's, love Rohit Sharma. He's been a servant for Indian cricket. I think it's time to blood someone new. Yes, this is a big series, probably not the time to make a change. But then again, India did that when Dhoni handed over the captaincy to Kohli mid-series in the India versus Australia series. I think this would have been the series before 2019. I think it was probably like 2015, 2016. Can't remember the exact year. And it was fine. It seemed okay. It helped India. That was sort of the precursor to what was going to come in the series after. So should we do it in mid-series? I don't think so. I think you ride it out, but you can tell that something's not right with Rohit. Something's going on mentally. He just had a newborn child. We don't know. Usually, when you have a newborn child, history shows that you have more clarity, but you don't know what has happened, what's going on personally with him. Hopefully the child is in great health, but you don't know. You don't know what's going on personally that's probably having an effect on him. Hopefully everything's okay. But you can sense that he's not there 100% captaincy wise,
Yes.
and and there's a lack of imagination with the captaincy. You could get a sense, and the commentators were saying as well when Head was batting, why not try just forcing him to score on one side of the wicket? And we saw glimpses of that when he was, and I was watching this live when it was between 50 to when he was between 50 to 100, where Siraj was the one bowling, and they packed the offside field, so they had a deep backward point. They had a sort of like a fly slip, or a very fine third man.
All the way back there. Yeah.
Yeah, and Siraj was sort of hitting the deck, bowling outside off, shortish, right? But then it still felt like they weren't fully into that field. If you're bowling that field, I I I didn't think you needed a short mid wicket. Just give up the single there, give up the boundary there, move that person into maybe a third man. So now you've packed your offside. So you've sort of, if there was a moment where Head got a edge that went over first slip, now maybe you had a fly slip there and a finer third man, and there's a wicket right there,
Yeah.
right? So maybe you go full in instead of trying to have I think it was a 7-2 or a 6-3 field. Just have a 8-1 field. Have a fine leg, because you may have a pull shot miss edge there that you could get a wicket off. Just give up runs on the leg side and just trust that Siraj or whoever's bowling can bowl outside off, whether it's
Hit
short,
the
full, or
deck
whatever,
and
and
just
hit
hit
the
the deck.
deck and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just clog the offside. Right? You didn't see that. You didn't see that. Like, it just, there isn't a lot of imagination. You felt like they stuck with their plans, and the plans didn't work, and then he didn't leave any room for creativity. Like, just try something. Just try something out of the norm. And I think that comes from having clarity in captaincy, and I just feel that's
Yes.
not there right.
No, no, exactly right. And I know when we were watching the game, we were messaging each other, And there was a moment in the game where I think Bumrah came a little earlier than expected, and I think you mentioned like, oh, clear signs of desperation, and that's what it was there. I think Rohit Sharma's trump card has always been Bumrah, but as we mentioned earlier in the pod, you can't be over reliant on him. You have to, alter your fields. You have to maybe perhaps even bring a part time bowler. Dhoni wasn't shy about that. Kohli wasn't shy about that. Bring a part time bowler because you sometimes just need a moment in the game to really change the momentum or the trajectory of it. But it just seemed like especially the between like Travis Head going from 50 to 100, it just seemed like he was going to get to 100 eventually because it just seemed so easy. Seemed like there's no creativity and really
It
no
was a
pressure
given.
on him. It was a given and no
Yeah.
pressure on him. So unfortunately, yeah, not good captaincy at all in my eyes as well.
How much do you think India missed Ashwin?
Oh my
Were you
gosh. I
surprised
just
to see that they left him out instead of Jadeja?
I was 100% because I would have expected Ashwin and then perhaps Washington Sundar to be the next best option because of his experience at the GABA. But no, I think you have to bring Ashwin in. He brings that experience. He also Ashwin. He's a very smart cricketer. If something's not working out, he is very quick to one offer his opinions and second do something himself. I've noticed it. I think in the last series, he even pulled a few leggies when his off breaks weren't working. Right? He was even not afraid to do stuff like that. And you need someone like Ashwin because I think the opposition. You hear a lot of their interviews as well. They respect Ashwin. Steve in the last series. Ashwin took Steve Smith's wicket a few times. He studied them. He knows what they have to do. So now I really wanted to see Ashwin at the GABA in my eyes.
Yeah, I think he would have made a bigger difference than Jadeja. Jadeja, love him, amazing player, one of the goats for India. But when it comes to his bowling, he doesn't have a lot of variation. It's either the traditional left arm orthodox or the arm ball. That's all he really has. He doesn't really have a doosra, and most left arm spinners don't. They don't have doosras. They don't have the other one. Whereas Ashwin has a bag of tricks. He literally has a bag, as they say in the NBA, and he has the mind to drop into his bag and create something out of nothing. That is something that Ashwin has. It's a gift, and I feel like he on pitches where there isn't much for a spinner, I feel India is better off with Ashwin just because he has the experience and he has a bag of tricks that he could dip into.
No, I completely agree. And I think you mentioned this earlier in the pod as well. Jaddu really had to either get a wicket or contain runs, and the latter
He
his
did
former
neither.
didn't do, and he didn't either. He was not able to contain runs, not able to, hold up an end. And unfortunately, some of our fast bowlers had to come in a little bit earlier as well.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I don't want to get into this part of the conversation, but I think we have to.
We
Travis
avoided
Head.
it too long. We avoided it for
Yeah,
too
we
long.
ordered it for 28 minutes, so let's just get it out of the way. Travis Head scores another freaking 100 back to back. Smith's back in form. What do you want to say about those two innings there?
No, I think let's start off with Travis Head first. Oh, it didn't seem like there was any difference between him versus the last test match versus now. Came back in, played his shots at a very, very positive rate. Very positive
Strike rate of
strikes,
95 for most of the innings. That's insane.
and he looked at ease. He looked so at ease. He didn't seem giddy. Didn't seem like a lot of false shots. I don't think very, very much false shots.
Nah, just that one
No,
edge over fly slip, really.
yeah, yeah. It seemed like he had an answer for anything. If the ball was slightly wide, if the ball was slightly short, he was on it, and he was very late in playing the cuts. And I think it was a masterclass in batting from him. And Steve Smith really dug in there. I think it wasn't the Steve Smith that we're perhaps used to, but it is a Steve Smith that we know of who will get the job done. And he found a way to get the job done, and he's stuck in there. And just before I hand it off to you, I just want to say this was a very reminiscent of the last BGT down under where Pant and Pujara were batting, and Pujara was really dug in there, and Pant was playing his shots. It seemed like the roles were similar here, where Steve Smith was really digging in there in his own mind, doing his own thing, and that allowed Travis Head to really play a shot. So no, I have nothing but praises for them. I hate admitting it, but they have really taken the match away from India in my eyes.
Yeah, yes. I'll start with Steve Smith. He was definitely helped by having Travis Head there,
Yes.
because he looked ugly batting. It was an ugly 100, but most of Steve Smith's hundreds are ugly just because of his technique. Um, it was a classic Steve Smith dig in there, scratchiness, just
Yeah.
head down, get your singles, hit the odd boundary here and there, and he scores 100. Right, back in form, one of the greats that Australia has ever produced. Uh, it was interesting to see when he came into bat. I don't know if you caught it on air, but when they were showing it live, he changed his technique. So he was starting out. He was batting. He was taking guard on leg or outside leg, and he
Yes.
was going across to the fourth stump outside off, and he had
Like
a big
exposing the leg
trigger
stump,
move.
right?
Yeah, exposing his leg stump, and they actually showed side by side with his trigger movement from the previous test match, and they barely was anything. He was mainly he just in his crease, and he was just playing the ball on merit. Whereas in this test match, he started with literally hopping across the stumps, and then as his innings progressed, you could see that he found his footing in the sense that the exaggeration of that hop wasn't as much. He was starting to get now just onto the off stump, maybe a little bit on middle stump, and he
Okay.
found his groove. And that was actually really cool to see how he rediscovered his technique live in game, and that was amazing to see. And you knew Steve Smith was in the groove when he got his cover drives going. That Steve Smith cover drive, it's not a Kohli cover drive. It's not your classic, beautiful Rahul Dravid, Sachin Tendulkar cover drive, Ricky Ponting cover drive. It is an ugly cover drive to see, but it is beautiful when it's Steve Smith that does it. And when he's got that going, you know he's in Nick, and it looked great. Great 100. Shout out to him, back in form. It looks scary for India going forward, but hey, they got to deal with it now. They got to figure out other plans because he's back. And
Yeah,
then with
no, I agree. No, no, just incredible batting. And actually, just wanted to comment on that point of the
yeah,
of him finding his footing. That's interesting. I need to go back and see that because I did notice him going extremely to the offside, like exposing the leg stump. But that point of finding his footing, I need to see that because again, that separates the great players from the good players. So no, that's an interesting observation for sure.
yeah, yeah. And with Travis Head, I have nothing to say. I think I said all the last test match. I don't want to say anything more. Um, Screw you, Travis Head. You need to stop scoring runs, man. India's got to put some aspirin in the pitch or something like that. You know how they
Oh
talk
my
about jelly beans?
gosh.
Just put some aspirin, some Tylenol in there. Maybe that'll help with the headaches, but I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it.
Dude, no, no, no. And then I think when he scored a century and he put the bucket on top of his bat. Oh my God,
Oh my God.
I remember you texted me that. I'm like, I hate
Yeah,
it. I hate
yeah.
it.
I remember watching it with our common friend Dean, and I was like, "Hey, you're gonna see his trademark celebration right now." And I low key, I was like, "I just want to turn off the TV," but I just had it on so that he could see it. But I hate it. I hate seeing that image of the lid in his on top of his bat, and it's a classic celebration. It's cool. It's cool. It's unique. But I don't want to see that ever again because if I see that, that means that he's done well and he needs to stop doing well against India, against our team. Do it against someone else. Don't do it against India.
No, literally, have your way with England, have your way with West Indies or South
Yeah.
Africa, but just continue to get those single digit scores with India. And no, it's unfortunate to also admit, but that little battle between him and Siraj, he's won it now, scoring another 100 when Siraj was bowling at you for a lot of spells. You know, he's really put Siraj in his place, and it's unfortunate to see.
Yeah, he has the upper hand over India. He's just figured it out. He has a gift with his hands and he knows how to use them. He turns good balls into bad balls, and not every batsman can do that. And shout out to him. Just stop scoring runs against India, please.
Please, I swear, I swear.
All right. So slog sweep for day 3. Do you see something special happening? Talk to me.
I think for India, again, I think this is a pretty common observation for a lot of Indian fans here. I think India needs a great opening stand. I think they will come in a bat tomorrow, um, and a lot of pressure, sure on Rahul or Rohit Sharma or whatever. But I really think, and I really hope Jaiswal is able to really dig in there and really put in a good high score. He's done it in Australia. He's been in touch as well. So if Jaspal is able to put up a big score, if he makes 100, he always makes 150. So I'm going to say 150. If he makes 150, I think that will put India in a pretty comfortable, in a pretty at least in a position to at least have a positive result in the match.
All right, all right. So my slog sweep is, I think this is the moment where you have India's old guard stepping up to the fore and
Okay,
scoring hundreds, each of them. Rohit Sharma, Virat
I
Kohli.
love
Because
it.
if Rohit Sharma continues and bats at 5, there's a chance he could bat alongside Kohli. And this is their moment. They need to step up. We need hundreds from them. We've been relying on the young generation, the younger guys so far.
Yeah.
But we need Rohit Sharma and Kohli. This is your moment. If you can score hundreds and India matches Australia's first innings target score, sorry, I think Australia is going for 500. I think they'll get there. And India needs to score at least 500 to come out of here with a draw. And for that to happen, we need 100 from Kohli and we need 100 from Rohit Sharma. And I think we're going to get one.
Damn, I love that take. Oh my god, sounds like a Bollywood movie, like a little climax scene. The two written off come together and they do the job, right? No, I love.
Yes.
Hopefully that has happened. I would not mind that at all.
Yes, yes. And that's a great place to end it for today's play. So we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, that stumps.